Good morning to all of you and welcome to our Thursday Namaste experience. It's wonderful to see all of you. Wonderful to be seen. We are going to continue this morning with the theme of our lesson from yesterday. If you remember, we found out two very, very important things that make all the difference in the world. Number one, that Bethel cannot give birth to a cat. And number two, that Jeff, if he could give birth at all, could not give birth to a dog. These are critically important details, don't you agree? And if we expand that out, we realize that we can only give birth to that which we are, just as God, the divine, can only give birth to divinity. God can only create what is divine. We need to hold to that, cling to that, realize only that is possible, and let everything else fade away. So we're going to be hopefully entering into the experience of that today. And we're going to begin with our prayer that we often pray together. It's our morning affirmation. I'm going to bring it up on the screen here so you can all see it. Here it is. So let's begin by chanting this prayer together, and not just with words, but with feeling and heart. Here we go. I am as God created me. If I remain as God created me, fear has no meaning. Evil is not real, and misery and death do not exist. I am as God created me. We must hold firm to this if we want to experience the real. Because without this realization, we will seem to see what is not really there, what could not be there, illusions, shadows, dreams. We will imagine that we see what God did not create and what could not be created through us. If we are the extension of the love and the loveliness of God, only one thing is possible. We create from there. And everything else that we experience is but it's time to readjust our sight so we can see through. So, a few moments ago, literally, like I was rushing to do this very quickly, I made a video to a song that I'd recorded before. But this is a song that I hope is going to bring this into your body. And the song is simply, I am as God created me, whole, complete, fully realized. So I want everybody here at Namaste to stand. And if the rest of you want to do so, you are welcome to. And I'm going to bring this up on the screen, and I'm going to encourage you to move, get the body into this. You can sing. The words are simply that, I am as God created me. So you know the words already. And you'll pick up the tune very quickly. So let's go ahead and we'll move and we'll dance and we'll sing and we'll let this reality, this truth, lift us and shape us and fill us completely. Let me put this up on the full screen. Oh, where'd it go? Here we go. Full screen. Here we go. Start to move around. Feel this in your bones. Remember, this is the only possible truth, so embrace it as so. I am as God created Yay, thank you. That gets you going, doesn't it? Now, I want you to notice something very important. It doesn't say that James or my identity is as God created me. It says, I am, the I am presence, reality, wholeness, that which is far beyond any identity that I've claimed, the smallness of this box that I've put myself in to hide from the reality that is forever real. This is what remains forever as it was created, whole, perfect, and complete. So our task is then to allow ourselves to lift above all of these forms, all of these limitations, into that reality. How do we do that? You don't. You don't, because you can't. The you that you've defined is only the truth within you that realizes it has already been done for you. It has already been finished. The job is done. You are as God created you, the truth within you. And that is why it's impossible, just as it's impossible for God or the divine to create anything that is not like itself. The same must be true for you. If it's true that you are the extension of the love and the loveliness of God, that what extends from God is whole and perfect, then what extends truly from you must also be whole and perfect. Does that make logical sense? Yeah. Of course it does. And yet, why do we then create a world where there is such division, such polarization, such hatred, war, dissent, you name it? Why? Because, of course, we are denying this. But as it says in the back in today's lessons, how can illusions satisfy God's Son? They can't. Illusions will never satisfy you. And this is why within each one of us, there is this longing, this yearning for the real. There is this yearning and longing for what we deep down know to be reality. And when we are ascending into that experience of reality, there's something within us that is open and rejoices and is free. It's free. I always love to look into the back and see our two guys back there just stretching and feeling, because the body has to respond in some way to that freedom, just as the body responds to the restriction. The body responds, in other words, it responds to what you give it. And if we're only giving it the truth, if we're only giving it reality, this is what yoga really is. You know, I had a conversation with Jet yesterday, and basically all we said is, you know, people think that yoga is doing asanas. That's not yoga. That's part of it, but it's certainly not the whole of it. Yoga is the expression and the expansion of grace, of reality. That's why there are different forms of yoga. There's bhakti yoga. That's what I consider myself. A bhakti yogi is one who's devoted. Devotion is the path. Love, open-heartedness, that's the path. Doing asanas can open up the heart and it can lift us so that we can realize I am as God created me. But it's the experience of I am that which is the true yoga, the true experience of any yogini, which is what you are. It's the same as saying you are the Christ. You are the whole thing, alive, vibrating, expanding right now. So once again, if you begin to see, or what appears to be outside you, something other than that, pull it back and remember, I am as God created me. I am perfect, whole, and complete right now. God cannot create anything other than what the divine is. And the same is true for you. And if it seems like you're creating a world, and I'm not saying that, you know, in any way to belittle the people who are suffering. in any way. But what I'm saying is that this is the way out, to realize that God can only create like itself. How can illusions satisfy God's Son? So I'm going to keep my part of this short today. This conversation happened this morning at the breakfast table, as so many of them do, when Calico said, boy, I love yesterday's session. And we began a conversation about what we shared yesterday, which is the same thing we're sharing today. And I said, I think we need to share the same thing today. Let's just take it a notch higher. Let's just realize that this is the only truth. God creates like itself. So I'm going to first turn to Calico, and then we'll go to Vicky to kind of wrap us up. But Calico had so many wonderful insights on this morning that I thought it would be wonderful to have her share. So Calico, I'm going to bring you on now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, everybody. Yesterday's lesson just was like kind of a freight train.
Hold on one second, Calico. We're having a hard time with the sound.
Okay.
You're not muted, so it must be me.
No, I'm not.
So that's muted. That's not. Un momento. Oh, that's why. Select microphone. Oh, it should be on. Okay, let's try.
Testing, 1, 2, testing.
Speakers. Okay, say something now, Calico.
Testing, 1, 2, testing.
Okay, I'm getting you on my computer, so I'm just going to see if I can put the microphone up to the computer so we can all hear. Go right ahead.
It's for those with the ears to hear. Yesterday's lesson just kept coming back to me over and over. It was one of those profound lessons that throughout the day, it kept going deeper and deeper and deeper. And it started with Bethel can't create a cat. And it just went from there. And one of the things I've known for myself, and everything I say is just for me, is that I had a hard time seeing my judgments originally. I couldn't see where I was judging you. And so this kind of took me in that direction of, if I am created as God, that means everything I see is created by God. And therefore, if I see anything in the story, then that's ego making some interpretation of it if I don't see it as just love. So it really took a whole life of its own all day yesterday. And I had this one woman call me that we shared with, and we were together early on at a different community, and I hated her. We had to join and do things together, and boy, there was nothing I liked about her, but we were in this Course of Miracle bubble. And there was one point I had her sit right next to me when we were joining, so that she was touching me. I needed to feel her as me. And it was, as I was feeling her, and again, I said this, perhaps to many it will sound like I said it to her, but I was really saying it to myself. I said, I would rather cut my leg off with a butter knife than join with you right now. And the reality was, I had so much self-hatred, and I was projecting it all on her. And I had to and this is where when Vicky jumped in after, James has shared, and then Vicky shared, really the only way to deal with this, anytime I see anything out there that doesn't meet my expectation of what it should look like, it's to drop immediately into prayer. Drop immediately. Do not pass go. Drop immediately into prayer and ask God for help in redefining it. because there's some belief in my mind, like joining with her, it was beating up against this self-hatred that I was projecting because she was just like me. I said, you know, you're just like me, only she was a much younger version. She was in her 20s. And I said, man, if I were in my 20s and I met you, we would be best friends. We would be going out on trips together, laughing together. We'd be having so much fun. But now I'm meeting you, I'm meeting my younger self as this other self that I appear to be right now, that has so many judgments about who I appear to be right now. And I couldn't embrace you. And I can now embrace her. And, you know, the whole call was just nothing. It was just a love fest. It was just a love fest. I mean, I was so excited to join with her and just, you know, really embrace that younger projection of who I am that I see her as now. And all I can say is it started with Bethel cannot create a cat, and therefore I cannot create a thought other than you are love. And if I create anything other than that, I'm judging something. And there's something to clear. And so I just had to say that because it just brings it all back. You know, it's the cancer, man, that took me about a 10-year period to embrace it. But now I totally embrace it. It's like I am as God created me. I can't create cancer. I can't create anything but love. So if I'm seeing cancer and I'm making it wrong, that's a clearing for me and only me. And then once I drop into prayer immediately, which I do on a regular basis, it's like, oh, right. This is my gift to myself to clear the belief that cancer is bad or that anyone is off in any way so that I can get back to a state of love. So there you go, Vicki. I'm turning it over. I mean, I just had so much fun with this. Bethel cannot create a cat. And that's where it started. I woke up kind of in a state of, you know, awesomeness. And so I just turned it over. Thank you, James. Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, everybody.
Wow. Calico, thank you. James, thank you. Thank you, because the way it hits me is we're circling around that idea that it's one problem, one solution. We're circling around that experience that whatever it is that we're seeing out there, we're always only seeing the light that we are or the denial of the light. And that once we can get the principle, we don't have to go through all the little, what Jesus calls the circuitous routes of where we think we have misbeliefs. Once we get the principle that we are God's child, we really are that, complete and healed and whole, and whatever else we're not just isn't. It was something that was a mistake, misperception. We landed in the land of perceiving instead of in the land of simply knowing love and doing nothing but extending love. So now here we are. How do we deal with it? And what we're talking about is let's get that principle clear. Bethel cannot create a cat. We cannot create hatred because we're not that. What we are is a natural state of love, giving of itself. And when we're not experiencing that, I don't know any other solution except stop, drop, and pray either. That's what I do, and I ask for help from me, not from my brother, because I'm not even seeing a brother. I am seeing distortions of how I'm experiencing myself. And the other principle is that goes along with this, when we find ourselves here in perception, that's very practical for me. It's the most practical thing I have used in the last 30 or 40 years. What is not love is a call for love. What is not love is murder. What is not love is fear. It's all that simple. That's the principle. Am I willing to take it, or do I want to justify some outrageous behavior, whether it's in a person, in a country, in anything. I don't want to anymore. I'm going to take the principle, and I'm going to go with what isn't love is fear. That's the way it hits me to be most practical. So when I see myself, my brother, a situation in some kind of horrible expression, I recognize, oh my God, this is just fear. It's just fear. And fear doesn't respond to more fear. All it does is activate more fear. It just, it infuses fear with more fear and more distortion. The only response to fear, and this is another principle, the principle is the only response to fear that is helpful is love. Period. No more explanation. So in my experience, when I'll come up against some situation where someone's clearly wrong and I'm clearly right, instead of dealing with the specifics, I use the principle, because hopefully after all these years, I get that principle. Okay, if it isn't love, it's fear. The only thing that helps fear is love. Let me, and this is that shift, let me get out of the perception. Let me shift into help. Here I am. Help me. That's prayer. And what isn't love is fear. I can see the only common sense response to someone or anything in fear is love. I love you. I love you. I love you. I haven't got a clue how this is going to work, what's going on. I love you. And stay with that. That takes me out of perception, and it drops me right back into the principle. So the other day, this is an example. The other day, I went to see my son and my grandchildren. So I'm with Tommy and Lyra, and Tommy's 5.5, and he loves to play superheroes. So he's got this treasure box, this little treasure box of these little superheroes, and he insists that we play superhero. Okay, I say. And so he insists that there are a lot of bad guys, but every superhero gets a power. And he says, okay, Tutu, that's me, Tutu, what are your powers? And he gives me 3 of these superheroes, and he keeps 3 superheroes. And I said, okay, Tommy, my power is going to be to make everything and everyone I point my power to into a baby. So if you've got a superhero that's destroying me and destroying the kingdom of everything, and everything's going wild, I've got a superhero that if I can hook up to you, I'm going to shoot my superhero power of turning you into a baby. He said, okay, until we did it. And then when I turned his bad guys into crying babies, not even crying, first of all. They were babies, and I said, now, Tommy, what do you think of that? And he said, my superhero's crying. He knew. I didn't have to tell him they're crying babies. This is how natural love is. He knew they were babies. And I said, okay, Tommy. And he said, they're crying. You made my superheroes cry. They're crying babies. And I said, okay, Tommy, well, let's take care of the babies and let's love them, and then let's go have a festival and have a party. And that's what we did. And then, of course, he got tired of that. And he said, I'm taking that superhero power back, Tutu. You can't have power anymore. So he gave me other powers. But isn't that a great example? Here's a kid in his just natural state. I turn his superhero bad guy into a baby, and he sees the baby as crying. That's still perception. But he got that anyone that was out to kill and destroy everything somehow was crying. And then together we said, okay, you've got crying babies now. What can we do? We can't do anything but love. Now that's a principle. And we don't turn each other into babies, but in perception, it is a choice on how we're going to see them. And when I see a bad guy, I see a crying baby. And I don't know how to express love in a form that's going to be helpful in perception, but I do know how to choose to extend love in my mind and in my heart in spite of what I think I'm seeing. That's the principle. What I'm seeing is not reality. It's an outpicturing of an inner state. of denying the light and the love that we are. So I recognize the principle and I drop into it. That's what a shift in perception is. That's what a miracle is. So instead of attacking the bad guy or coming up with a million solutions to save the situation, I drop out of perception into the principle. What isn't love is fear. And I'm going to love this guy, this country, this army, this whatever it is. And I don't know and thank God, by my nature of being divine, I don't need to figure out the details, how they show up in perception. Because my reality now is my mind is responding to the principle that what isn't love is fear, and love is always the answer. Amen, everybody. Thank you, Calico. Thank you, Brother Tim.
Yes. Thank you, Vicki. So, Bethel, so I'm wondering how you feel about the fact that this is probably going to catch on, this whole thing. And from now on, maybe 100, 200 years from now, people are still going to say, Bethel cannot give birth to a cat. Don't you realize that? They'll say, well, who's Bethel? Well, we don't know. That's just where it started. But we do know that Bethel cannot give birth to a cat. And that will be a whole universal teaching that will go on for hundreds, if not thousands of years. You feel okay about that?
I'm okay.
All right, good. And it really does come down to, as Vicki said, there's one problem, there's one solution. The one problem is that we believe it's possible to be separated from that which created us, which is love. That it's possible for us to be separate from the source of all love. And in believing this, we jump off in all these different directions, very, very unstable, very unsettling. But one problem, one solution means if we let go of that seeming problem, we come back to the solution to realize that anything that is not love is a call for love. So what's the only proper response in any situation? Love. Love. So create as you were created. See what sees you. Love that which is so lovable within you. Let this be simple and playful. I mean, today's lesson was a very playful lesson because we learn best when we learn like children, just like with Tommy. Tommy learned a great lesson that will be inside him, whether he remembers the specifics, the lesson will be inside him because of his tutu. And we all have our own tutu, the Divine Mother, the Divine Father, who are teaching us about love every moment. So remember, how can illusions satisfy you when you are only love? That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. So, any of you want to say anything? Any of you, like Calico or Vicki or anyone else? Why not? Anyone else have a 5-word comment before we close?
Hello.
Anyone here? Oh,
Hello,
yes,
I
please.
would.
Yes, Sharon,
Hi.
we always love when you
Well, it's great when we talk about secrets, and the secret of the ego is really all it is. It's just an idea that stuff is supposed to happen against our will and against God's will. That's the idea of the ego first. And secondly, looking at the ego clearly is the ego loves to have its bearings. It likes to create these bearings of chaos, and it's familiar, like hurricanes, like cancer, like all of that, like addictions of all kinds. And so that is the ego in a nutshell. And in truth, nothing real can be threatened. Therefore, nothing unreal exists. And so to end this, I would like to say this. So I forgive myself for using this world to prove that I am separate from God. Amen.
Thank you, Sharon. I see that Alice has her hand up, so we'll go to Alice and then we'll close. So go ahead, Alice.
It's lovely to be here again. Everything that has been said today is vital. It is so important. And when Vicki was sharing about superheroes going into babies, this is incredible because as God created us, we are innocent. And that word today, innocence, is coming to me a lot. And a baby symbolizes that innocence. I mean, if we think of certain people in the world today as innocent babies, that is their Christ selves. And as we can do that, we can love them instead of, find it difficult. And that helps me when I'm visualizing, trying to love unlovable, so-called unlovable souls or beings or something. Because if I visualize myself as a baby, I am innocent. And that innocence is love. So this is also what I'm embracing today with everything that's being said, which is just, it's like the core. It's like the real core of what the whole message is all about and what we're reminding each other of.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Alice. Thanks to all of you. This is so core, so simple, and so beautiful. You can only give birth to that which gave birth to you. And what gave birth to you is love itself. So embrace that, live there, breathe that in. Whenever you find yourself separating from that idea, just come back. Just remember how simple salvation is. So thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful day. We love you so much. We'll be here tomorrow, as always. See you then.
Thank you. I love you all.
Love you.
Bye-bye for now.
Love you.
Bye-bye.